What's going on, guys? Second Dinner has released the most recent over-the-air changes today, and they're pretty big. So let's just jump right in. As we can see, first up is our girl Elsa Bloodstone. The power she hands out has been reduced from 3 power to 2 power. This was just sort of a necessary change. Elsa came out and became essentially the best card in the game since she was released. She can fit into almost any deck. There's just no reason to not use a 2 cost that can be at minimum 11 power if you fill every lane. And then, of course, there's ways to take advantage with Jeff, with Nightcrawler, with Kitty Pryde. It was just so much power from a 2 cost card. It didn't make any sense. I think this grade, I would give this an A. People talked about maybe reducing her from a 2 power to like 0 power to make like the floor lower, but leave that high roll. But it's just that why have that high roll built into a 2 power card? I know they want to make the new cards playable, but she was in every deck. Every deck can use it, and the decks that were already strong can just put her in and become stronger. Loki decks were stronger. There's a move package with Angela and stuff, which we'll get to, was just everywhere on the ladder. And I hate to be, negative, but man, I get sick of when things are just that omnipresent on the ladder. You get sick of it, right? Like I was sick of the Darkhawk thing when Darkhawk and Rockslide was the meta. You just get sick of seeing this Angela, Elsa, Kitty Pryde, Jeff, Nightcrawler, Spider-Man, still the same stuff. So I think that giving her 2 power like that, the system will still pay off. It just won't be game winning. You could put just the package of cards that's strong, Angela, Kitty, Elsa, and then like one more, maybe Jeff, maybe Nightcrawler. And then just fill the rest of your deck with tech cards. Cards like Luke Cage, cards like Mobius, cards like Armor or Cosmo. Cards that you have to sort of find room in your deck for usually. You don't, you have to generate power to win the game and then find room to take these cards that sort of prevent your opponent from winning or counter what your opponent's doing. But since you got so much power out of this small package of cards, you could put all of them, all the tech cards, in your deck. I don't think the card was oppressive in the way that other cards in the past, the way that Loki was at his initial release, the way that Silver Surfer or Zabu were. It didn't feel that bad to play against. It wasn't like I just said I'm sick of it, but it was never like that broken. So I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of looked back at this sometime and see if they could find another way to rework her with the numbers. But overall, I just think the game needed it. The card was just, it was everywhere. It was too much. And now, speaking of Loki, last month's broken card, he has been changed. People have been calling for him to be nerfed. He kind of got hit just when Mobius came out. There was a dip in his playability. But it came right back. The best deck, according to like the top players, was Elsa and Loki in the same deck. So finally, they hit Loki. People thought maybe they'd move him down to a 3/3, but they in fact changed his cost to 4. This hurts his flexibility. The way that like having a premium statted 3-cost card with an effect that in essence wins you the game never made any sense to me. I don't know why that makes sense to, like trying to pretend that the replacing your hand with your opponent's deck and them all being cheaper as like a downside, something to make the card premium statted, that's silly. So now we have it as a 4 cost with 5 power, which makes it an understated card for 4 cost. It's now more difficult to play him as just a tempo card. You have to have a real game plan, and you have to have a real follow-up to it. You can't play it on turn 5 with Collector, which was sort of one of the main synergies of it. You can't play it with other cards like Jeff or whatever. So it'll be more difficult to make Loki work. You could get him out early with a Zabu, but then you can't play Collector and Zabu. I don't know if that makes sense, although maybe Nick Fury, Zabu, Loki could be a thing. I don't know, maybe. I didn't see it as much, and I never played Loki as much as everybody else. So you're probably going to have to take the word from people who know better. Go see what KM Best says, see what Lambie says. So I'm going to give this one a B. I think it is rough. Personally, my favorite Loki deck, the one Loki deck that I played was my Loki Silver Surfer deck, which I really enjoyed. And now ah, that's just kind of dead, right? They changed Shadow King, so he's not a surfer target. They changed Loki, he's not a surfy target. You can't play Loki out of threes now. We'll see. Maybe it's okay. Next up is the Collector. The Collector got nerfed as a response to Loki, and everybody thought it was kind of weird that it caught like a stray bullet from Loki. It was fine as it was. It just made the Collector unplayable in decks that weren't Loki and still playable in Loki, which was not the intent, I think. So they brought it back to where it should be as a 2/2. I think that's fine. I think the nerf was a temporary thing. They said it was temporary, and this makes sense. A. The next nerf is a big one. Angela has been one of the best cards in Marvel Snap since launch. It used to be a 2/1. It would gain 2 power. They nerfed it to a 2/0. But it kept the 2 power buff that it got. So it continued to be just one of the strongest 2-drops you could play, especially once Kitty Pryde came out. It's just always been a top card. So now it has 2 power to start, but it only gets 1 power when you play a card here. It's hard to say what you feel about this, right? Like, I kind of was getting sick of the Angela thing. You get sick of seeing the same card. But does this mean the card is dead? Will it never be seen again? I think certain decks will still be able to use it. I think the synergy with Kitty Pryde and Elsa is still there. It's just less. You won't be seeing any Angelas with 12 power, right? You probably top out at like 7. Naturally, the natural game, it tops out at 5 because you can add 3 cards on top of Angela. 2/7 is good. I think you still see it, but the entire deck might just get stopped being played. I bet we're not going to see much Angela, Kitty, Elsa for a little bit because people just won't feel good about playing all these nerf cards. As a grade, I'd give it kind of like a. It still feels like this was the power of Angela was a side effect of the Elsa, Kitty, Jeff, blah 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 package. I also say incomplete because I don't know if this was necessary, but I guess we'll give it another B, maybe a C. I just don't think it was like I don't know if anybody was calling for this nerf. Real quick, I just want to say this Angela variant is in my store right now. What? This is the best variant for Angela. Why release it when you nerf her? I mean, I'm glad they didn't release it yesterday because I probably would have bought it. Okay, next up is Sauron. Sauron has changed to be a 3/2. The Shuri deck with Sauron remains to be one of the strongest cards and the strongest decks in the games. Quietly, one of the strongest decks and quietly one of the strongest cards. It's 1 less power for that deck. Kind of like the Shuri thing. They took 1 power off of the card. The power isn't the reason you run these cards. The output, the effect it has on the rest of your deck or on your next turn. So it's like the tiniest change, right? It's almost irrelevant. I'll give it another C. Like, it's kind of just like, who cares? Next up is Uatu. When I give them credit, they are trying to make this card, which has just always been one of the most useless cards. Even when you first get it in Series 1, it's just not there. It used to, you had to have it in your hand for it to show you locations. Now they changed it so it always shows you the far right location as long as it's in your deck. Now they went up in 1 power. It was 1/1 before this. Now it's 1/2. In my mind, what I would have done is make it a 1/0, or even a 1-1 if you want. But just make it a 1/0 and it shows you all 3 spots. Knowing what locations has some utility. I don't know how much extra information you get, how much extra advantage you get from seeing the second location on turn 1, because you always see it by turn 2, right? He's the watcher, he sees all. But giving him more power means he can like fight for you, and he's not supposed to do that, right? Like flavor-wise, all he does is watch. So yeah, make him a 1/0. He shows you all the locations. Is that broken? I don't think so. Knowing the third one is like, that's the most advantage you'll get from being able to look forward at locations. And it does that the way it is now. So just let you see all 3, make it a 1/0. You never play it. It takes up a spot in your deck. You can see locations. I still don't think that's good. I still don't think that'll really be a winning card. It's just a cool idea you can have, a cool thing to try out, So I'll give this one they're trying. I'll give it a C. Okay, the next one we have is Hell Cow. As you can see, it goes from a 4-6 to a 4-8. Discarding 2 cards from your hand that are not targeted, just random discards, has always been too dangerous to play. Like the deck you would want to run this in is a Hella deck. And I still have it there because I'm a hipster. I don't like doing the things that people do, right? I'd rather do this like an honest Hella deck where you just try to discard cards and then drop Hella. So there you can barely play him. But this, actually, say you play your Blade when Hellcow is on the far right. Like say Hellcow gets discarded. It's still an 8 power card. It's actually a decent enough like Hella production card now. In the past, when you had like the old Blade that always discarded Hella, and you had Hellcow and Lady Sif, if you ever accidentally discarded one of the cards that discard for you, they were bad targets. You don't really want Hella bringing those back. So this is now, if he is discarded, he's a pretty decent power drop for Hella. So I think that's kind of cool. So I'm going to give this change a B+. He's still dangerous, right? He's still playing the honest Hella deck without MODOK. That's what I mean. No, without Invisible Woman or without MODOK, which is obviously the best way to do it. But I can never, if I have to draw 3 cards in one game, that doesn't happen. Every 15 games that happens. So I don't like doing that. I mean, 4-8 is pretty typical, like strong 4-drop stat line. Yeah, B+. And then last up we have Spectrum. Spectrum is one of the first like strong 6-drop cards you get. It opens up a new deck archetype in the early game. And it's always sort of a fun one to play. It's just me. I'm like a Timmy in that way. I just like playing a card that adds more power to all your other cards. So I've always liked Spectrum as a card. I have my awesome variant that Dara won me in that contest. And now she's a 6-7. It just adds a little bit more to the lane you play her in. Lets you fight for that lane a little bit better. Like you always would, you drop, Armor, Cosmo, Luke Cage, something, Warpath in one lane. And then typically follow up with a Destroyer, right? That's part of that deck. Or you try to play Wong and Spectrum. And just her lane is struggled always because she's only a 6-5. So it just helps a little bit. It's a little boost. They got the movie coming out. That makes sense. Cool variants. That makes sense. I like it. I like it a lot. It's just a card that was a little on the weak side once your collection really flushes out. I thought in the past maybe Spectrum could get to be 3 power buff, but anytime they do 3 power buff, you see it with Silver Surfer, you see it with Elsa, it's too much. So I think this is the right move. So this one gets an A from me. I love it. That's all the changes this week. What do you guys think? Do you like these changes? Do you think they did too much? Not enough? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, happy snapping.